Hello, and welcome to the HotSeat. I'm Martin Rogers, here with Tony Travers to discuss last night's local elections. Welcome, Tony.
Morning.
First of all, very mixed picture, but quite a broadly positive result for the Conservatives.
Well, given that the Conservatives have either in the coalition or now as a majority government been in power for 6 years, these are remarkable results actually for them still to be gaining seats, however lower level, they still gain some. So yeah, it's a good result for the Conservatives. And of course, particularly, and I know we're going to come on to talk about this in Scotland, a remarkable result there for them. So yes, I think they're going to look at these results and think, given how long we've been in power, the Conservatives can think, yep, it's not bad, certainly outside London.
Now, as we speak now, London hasn't been declared and some results across England haven't been declared. But it's a remarkably mixed picture. So certain places that Labour were expected to lose, they've held, such as Crawley, which is quite an unusual result in the circumstances. But UKIP have advanced at Labour's expense in Thurrock. The Conservatives have held on to some places they perhaps weren't expecting to. This has been an incredibly mixed picture, but overall positive for the Conservatives, underwhelming for Labour or worse?
Well, I mean, it's intriguing to look at how the Labour picture is being analysed today, because Labour itself, according to much publicised leaked briefing notes overnight, has, as it were, been comparing the vote share, or the likely vote share in the locals in England with last year's general election. Whereas, of course, I think probably more realistically we should be going back to the performance in 2012, Ed Miliband as leader, and at that point the vote share, Labour was well ahead, they had 39% of the vote then. It's going to be lower than that when we get the final figures. So I think that it's all about expectations, and what I think the Labour leadership and supporters of Jeremy Corbyn are going to say is, look, this is work in progress. It's not as bad as some of the commentators said. We've only lost a few seats. Now, losing seats in opposition is not great, but not as many as some of the experts had suggested. So they can claim that. Whereas the question of whether this is a winning starting point in terms of going on to a 2020 victory, I think that's less certain by a long way.
It's interesting you talk about expectations there. So there have been Rawlings and Thrasher have done their work that had predicted a 150 seat loss for the Labour Party. But they have become the first opposition since the early to mid 80s to lose seats in local elections in opposition. And given the structural factors in their favour, incumbency, midterm elections, austerity, EU, the Conservatives at war with themselves over the EU, the expectations really do matter here, don't they? That this is a broadly underwhelming result, but by no means a disaster.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's not great for an opposition party against a government which is indeed indulging a kind of civil war over Europe. The Conservatives are. Consequently, Labour ought to be doing quite well. And I think if we stand back from all of this, it will take pressure off Jeremy Corbyn. So from the Conservatives' point of view, they've won a few seats. Jeremy Corbyn will be that much more embedded as Labour leader, and I think the Conservatives will see that from their point of view as a win, apart from the London result we're about to talk about soon.
Okay, to move on to Scotland then, that has been a remarkable result, hasn't it? The SNP have maintained their first place, don't have a majority, but the Conservatives, the official opposition, looks to be nearly 10 seats ahead of Labour. This is quite a remarkable turnaround for the Conservative Party, from nothing in the late 90s and the Labour Party dominant in Scotland. This is quite a remarkable result, isn't it?
It is a remarkable result. It may be that the SNP doesn't get a majority in Scotland, and I think that will be viewed by some as begging a question of whether the SNP has now peaked in some way. For the Conservatives and for Ruth Davidson, their leader, a remarkable result. I think that positioning the Conservatives in Scotland positioned now as the only centre-right party is really good for them, and I think they can build on that. For Labour, hard to exaggerate how bad this is, because it suggests that the Labour Party in the UK, or in Britain as a whole, is now fighting the 2020 election with Scotland effectively written off, and that gives them a really steep hill to climb.
To move briefly on to Wales then, not by any means a disastrous result for the Labour Party, some gains for Clyde, some gains for UKIP. So how do you feel that that's played out?
Political map of Wales is amazing. It's multicoloured. It's the most plural part of the United Kingdom in terms of 5 parties effectively in contention. I think that the Labour leadership in Wales will see itself as having done well, certainly compared with Scotland, and Labour are almost certainly going to form a minority government again in Wales. Now, UKIP will have gained some seats. Neil Hamilton, I think, has been elected for the Welsh Assembly, so they've got a bridgehead there too. Plaid Cymru have done quite well on seating a senior member of Labour in his constituency. But overall, I mean, it's going to be sort of carry on regardless, or carry on as before, I think, in Wales.
And finally, very briefly, there were 2 parliamentary by-elections last night. For me, the Hillsborough, Sheffield, Hillsborough, Brightside by-election is particularly interesting for UKIP. Everything was set up for UKIP to do well, but they fell back slightly. Does this imperil UKIP's future at a time when they should be doing very well, or is this just another element of the mixed picture that we're seeing, given that they did so well in Thurrock and across the east of England?
I mean, conditions are good for UKIP this year. They've got the EU referendum coming up in a few weeks. Sheffield is the kind of northern city where you'd expect them to be able to build on past success, or at least past, building up their vote in the past. It hasn't really happened. They've won a few council seats here and there. You mentioned Thurrock earlier on. They've done quite well in a number of authorities on the east of England. But the truth is, it's not a sort of a UKIP performance that suggests they're motoring on towards building the party up to being a real contender in British politics. So the by-election results were very much as predicted. They're the least interesting part of the whole picture overnight, really. But nevertheless, I think what we can learn from this is that UKIP, although they've continued to make a bit of progress, not massively so.
Great. Thank you very much, Tony. You're off the hot seat.
Thank you.